The text came at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. I was on my couch, halfway through a bowl of ramen and a documentary about ocean life, when my phone lit up with a message from Mom in the family group chat. Mom, family meeting this Saturday at 2 p.m. Everyone must attend. No excuses. I stared at the message, chopsticks suspended halfway to my mouth. Family meetings were rare in our household, reserved for major announcements like deaths, divorces, or my sister Jennifer's latest drama. And given that Jennifer had gotten engaged 6 months ago to Brandon, a guy none of us really liked but everyone pretended to tolerate, I had a sinking feeling this meeting was about her. Me. What's this about? Mom. We'll discuss it Saturday. Just be there. Dad. It's important, Kyle. Jennifer. Yeah, Kyle. Don't be difficult. The use of don't be difficult immediately put me on guard. That phrase was family code for, we're about to ask you to do something you won't want to do, and we're preemptively framing any objection as you being unreasonable. I put down my ramen and pulled up my sister's Instagram. Her most recent post was from 3 days ago, a selfie with Brandon at some expensive restaurant. Caption reading, "My king treats me right," with about 15 hashtags. Normal Jennifer content. But then I scrolled back further and noticed something. 2 weeks ago, she'd posted a story. I'd missed it because I usually muted her stories, that said, "When life throws curveballs, but family comes through curveballs." I opened a private chat with my cousin Rachel, the only family member I actually trusted. Me. Do you know what the family meeting is about? Rachel. Oh shit. You don't know. Me. Know what? Rachel. Brandon lost his condo. Something about debt, I think. Gambling, maybe. Jennifer's been freaking out because they need somewhere to live before the wedding. My stomach dropped. Me. And they're having a family meeting because... Rachel. Kyle, you live in the nicest apartment in the family, in the city, alone. Do the math. I looked around my apartment. My one bedroom in downtown Seattle that I'd fought tooth and nail to get. The place I'd lived for 3 years. The apartment with the perfect view of the Sound, the one I'd furnished slowly and carefully with things I actually liked, the space that was finally completely mine. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Me? They wouldn't. Rachel. Your mom literally called my mom yesterday asking how to phrase it delicately. I'm so sorry, Kyle. I would have warned you earlier, but I literally just found out an hour ago. I sat there in the glow of the TV, my ramen getting cold, reality settling over me like a heavy blanket. They were going to ask me to move out of my apartment so Brandon, my sister's fiancé, who I'd met maybe 6 times, could live there. The audacity was breathtaking. But what really got me, what made my hands start shaking with something that wasn't quite anger yet, but was definitely heading in that direction, was the family meeting format. They weren't asking me privately, they weren't having a conversation, they were staging a referendum, they were going to make this a family decision, which meant I'd be outnumbered, which meant they'd already decided, and this meeting was just theater to make it look democratic. I didn't sleep well that night. Saturday arrived with the inevitability of a dental appointment. I woke up with a knot in my stomach that coffee and breakfast couldn't dissolve. I considered not going, just texting Mom that I was sick, avoiding the whole thing, but that would just delay the inevitable and make me look like I was running away from the issue. Whatever they were planning, I needed to face it head on. I spent the morning trying to distract myself. Cleaned my apartment, even though it was already clean. Went for a run along the waterfront, pushing myself harder than usual, trying to burn off the anxious energy. Took a shower that lasted 30 minutes because I kept standing under the hot water, dreading what was coming. Finally, at 1:45 p.m., I couldn't put it off any longer. I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue, a sprawling 4-bedroom split level they'd bought 20 years ago when real estate in the Seattle area was still somewhat reasonable and Dad's tech job at Microsoft was bringing in 6 figures. The neighborhood was all cookie-cutter houses with perfect lawns and HOA rules about mailbox colors. I'd grown up here, but it had never felt like home, just a place I'd survived until I could leave. The driveway was full. Mom's white SUV, Dad's silver sedan, Jennifer's red convertible, a graduation present from our parents that I'd never gotten an equivalent of, and a black pickup truck I didn't recognize but assumed was Brandon's. It was lifted, with oversized tires and one of those metal grills on the front that looked aggressive and unnecessary. I parked on the street and sat in my car for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the house through my windshield. My apartment. They wanted my apartment. The apartment I'd found after 3 months of exhausting searching, scrolling through listings every night, going to open houses every weekend, competing with 20 other desperate applicants for every halfway decent place. The apartment I'd finally secured by offering 6 months' rent up front, basically draining my savings account, just to make my application stand out. The apartment that cost $2,400 a month, and which was actually reasonable for downtown Seattle, for a one-bedroom with a view, an in-unit laundry, and a building that didn't smell like mildew. The apartment that required a guarantor because my salary as a graphic designer, while decent at $65,000 a year, wasn't quite 3 times the rent like most landlords required. Grandma Ruth had been my guarantor. She'd signed the papers 3 years ago, sitting in the leasing office with me, reading through every page carefully while I fidgeted nervously beside her. "This is a good place," she'd said when we were done, patting my hand. "You need a place of your own, Kyle. Somewhere you can build your life without anyone else's nonsense clouding it up. Somewhere that's yours and only yours." She'd known my family well. Known that they'd suffocate me if I stayed too close. Known that I needed distance to figure out who I was without their constant commentary on who I should be, and now they wanted to take it from me. I got out of the car, locked it, and walked up the brick pathway to the front door. Each step felt heavy, like I was walking towards something inevitable and terrible. The front door was unlocked. It always was during family gatherings, Mom's way of making everyone feel welcome, even though half the time people in this family didn't feel welcome at all. I let myself in. The living room had been arranged like a courtroom. Someone had clearly spent time setting this up, staging it for maximum psychological impact. Dad sat in his leather recliner, the expensive one he'd bought himself for his 60th birthday, the one nobody else was allowed to sit in. Mom was on the couch, perched on the edge like she was ready to spring into action. Jennifer sat on one end of the love seat, and Brandon sat on the other end like he owned the place, legs spread wide in that aggressive masculine sprawl, arms crossed over his chest, chin slightly raised. He was wearing a tank top, a gray tank top that showed off his arms that were admittedly muscular, probably from the gym membership Jennifer had mentioned he couldn't afford anymore, in my parents' house, at what was supposed to be a formal family meeting. The disrespect was casual and deliberate. "Kyle," Mom said brightly, her voice doing that thing where it went up an octave and got all fake sweet, the voice she used when she was about to ask me to do something I didn't want to do. "Come sit down, honey. We're so glad you could make it." Like I'd had a choice. Like the text hadn't said mandatory. The only available seat was a folding chair, one of the cheap metal ones from the garage that we used for big parties, positioned in the center of the room, facing everyone else. Like I was being interviewed, or interrogated, or put on trial. I looked at the setup and almost laughed. The staging was so obvious, so heavy-handed. They were trying to intimidate me, to make me feel small and outnumbered before the conversation even started. I sat down in the folding chair, but I didn't slouch. Kept my back straight. Kept my face neutral. "So," Dad started, clearing his throat in that way he did when he was about to say something he knew would be controversial, a habit I'd watched for decades. "We wanted to talk to you about your living situation. About the apartment." "My living situation," I repeated, keeping my voice flat. "The apartment where I live, the one I pay rent on every month. That living situation?" "Yes." Mom jumped in quickly, her hands clasped together in her lap like she was praying. "Your apartment in the city, the one bedroom on Pine Street, the one with the beautiful view of the water." "I know which apartment I live in, Mom." Jennifer made a face like I was being deliberately obtuse, rolling her eyes in that exaggerated way she'd perfected as a teenager. "Can you not be defensive for like 5 seconds? We're just trying to have a conversation here." "Okay, what about my apartment?" Brandon leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to look sincere and failing. There was something calculated in his expression, like he'd practiced this in the mirror. "Here's the thing, man. I'm in a tough spot right now. My condo, I had to give it up. Some financial stuff. You know how it is. Credit issues, some bad investments. Things just spiraled. And with the wedding coming up in 6 months, Jennifer and I need a place to live. Somewhere stable where we can start our life together." I looked at Jennifer. She was nodding along, her expression a careful mixture of concern and hope. "Don't you live here?" I asked her directly. "I'm 27 years old, Kyle." Her voice had that edge of offense, like I'd insulted her. "I can't live with Mom and Dad forever. It's embarrassing. All my friends have their own places." The irony of this statement, coming from someone who'd moved back home 4 times in the past 6 years, once after getting fired, twice after breakups, once because she needed to save money, was apparently lost on her. "Okay," I said slowly. "So you need an apartment. There are lots of apartments in Seattle. Hundreds of them. Not affordable ones, Brandon said, and there was something almost accusatory in his tone. Everything's crazy expensive. Studios are going for $1,800. One-bedrooms are $2,500 minimum. But your place? What do you pay? Like $12,400? I didn't answer. Hey, that's a steal for that location, he continued. Downtown, walking distance to everything, that view. Jennifer showed me pictures. It's perfect for us. 2 people can make that work way better than 1 person living alone. We'd split it, like $200 each. The implication hung in the air. I was being wasteful by living alone in an apartment that could house a couple. So, I said, keeping my voice level, you want me to move out of my apartment so you can move in? We want you to consider it, Mom said quickly. We're not demanding anything. We're just asking you to think about it. Think about making myself homeless so Brandon can have cheap rent. Don't be dramatic, Dad said. Nobody's saying you'd be homeless. You could find another place, maybe a studio or a roommate situation. You're young, you're flexible, someone like Brandon who's about to start a family. We're trying for a baby right after the wedding, Jennifer interjected, beaming. We want at least 2 kids, so we really need a stable place. Someone like that needs stability, Dad finished. I looked around the room, at my parents, who'd raised me to believe in independence, at my sister, who'd never lived anywhere she hadn't been financially supported by someone else, at Brandon, this man I barely knew, sitting here expecting me to give up my home. No, I said. The word landed like a stone in still water. No? Mom repeated, like she hadn't heard correctly. No, I'm not moving out of my apartment. Kyle, be reasonable, Dad started. I am being reasonable. You're asking me to give up my home. The answer is no. It's not just your home, Jennifer said, her voice rising. Grandma was the guarantor, which means it's kind of a family asset. That's not how guarantors work, Jennifer. Don't talk down to me. She was getting that edge in her voice. You're being so selfish right now. Brandon and I need this. We're starting a life together. What do you need it for? You don't even have a girlfriend. The words hit where she'd aimed them. At the loneliness I tried not to think about, but I didn't flinch. Whether or not I have a girlfriend is completely irrelevant to whether I deserve to live in my own apartment, I said quietly. Boys, Mom said, holding up her hands, let's not fight. Kyle, honey, I understand this feels sudden, but family helps family. When you needed a place, Grandma helped you. Now Brandon needs help, and he's going to be family soon, so we help each other. Grandma helped me by co-signing a lease. She didn't kick someone else out of their home to do it. Nobody's kicking anyone out, Dad said, but his tone suggested he was losing patience. We're asking you to make a sacrifice for family. A sacrifice, I repeated. You want me to sacrifice my housing? You can find another place, Brandon said. It might not be as nice, but you'll figure it out. I would do the same for my brother if he needed it. Does your brother need it? What? Does your brother need a place to live? Because if family helps family, maybe you should ask him. Brandon's face darkened. Don't be a dick. Brandon, Mom said sharply. Language. Sorry, Mrs. Foster, but he's being really difficult about this. I'm being difficult, I said slowly, because you're asking me to give up my apartment. That's an inherently difficult situation. Jennifer was crying now. Real tears or fake, I could never tell. Mascara was starting to run. I can't believe you do this to me. On top of everything we're dealing with, the wedding planning, the stress, Brandon's situation, and you can't even help your own sister. Jennifer, I'm sorry you're stressed, but my apartment isn't the solution to your problems. Fine, Dad said, standing up. His voice had gone cold. If that's how you want to be. How I want to be. I want to live in my apartment. That's literally it. You're being selfish, Mom said, using her disappointed tone. You're putting yourself before family. I'm putting myself before a stranger who wants my apartment. He's not a stranger, Jennifer shrieked. He's my fiancé. I've met him 6 times, Jennifer. That's not my fault. You never come to family events. I came today. Yeah, and look how that's going. She was fully crying now. Brandon put his arm around her, glaring at me like I'd personally attacked her. Kyle, Dad said, his voice taking on that authoritative tone, we're going to table this for now, but I want you to really think about what family means, what loyalty means, because right now you're showing us that you don't value those things. I stood up. I value my home and my autonomy. If that makes me selfish in your eyes, I guess I can live with that. Where are you going? Mom asked as I headed for the door. Home, to my apartment. Kyle, we're not done. But I was already gone. Out the door, down the walkway, getting into my car while behind me I could hear Jennifer's wails and Mom's comforting and Brandon's muttering. I got in my car, closed the door, and just sat there. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding. But underneath the adrenaline, there was something else. Relief. I'd said no. I'd stood up for myself. I'd drawn a boundary and held it even when they'd tried to make me feel terrible for it. And I'd meant it. I drove back to my apartment, my beautiful, perfect apartment with its view of the Sound and its rent that I paid every month on time, and I sat on my couch in the silence. My phone buzzed immediately, a text from Jennifer. "You're dead to me." Another from Mom. "Very disappointed in you." One from Dad. "We'll discuss this again when you've had time to reconsider your position." I turned off my phone and just sat there, looking out at the water. They'd tried to guilt me, shame me, manipulate me into giving up my home, and when that didn't work, they'd made me the villain. But I'd said no, and I'd keep saying no. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was that they weren't done, that they were about to escalate this to a whole new level, that in just 3 days they would try to vote me out of my own home, and that vote would be the worst mistake they ever made. The text came on Tuesday morning while I was at work. "Mom, family meeting this Saturday at 2 p.m. Attendance mandatory. We're making a final decision about the apartment situation." I read it 3 times, final decision, like it was theirs to decide. I called Rachel. "They're doing it again," I said when she picked up. "The apartment thing? I thought you said no." "I did. They're having another meeting. They said they're making a final decision." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Kyle, you know your lease is in your name, right? They can't actually make you leave." "I know that, but I don't think they know that." "Are you going to go?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to skip it just to make a point, but another part wants to see how far they're actually willing to take this." "Be careful," Rachel said. "Your mom gets really intense when she thinks she's right, and Jennifer's been posting cryptic stuff on Instagram about betrayal and family loyalty. I think she's working herself into a victim narrative." "Of course she is." Saturday came. I almost didn't go. I sat in my apartment that morning, drinking coffee, looking out at the Sound, thinking about how insane it was that I was even considering attending a meeting about whether I got to keep my own home. But curiosity won. I had to see what they were planning. I arrived at 2:15 p.m., deliberately late. The scene was even more staged than last time. The dining room table had been set up like a conference room. Dad sat at the head, Mom sat to his right, Jennifer sat to his left. And Brandon. Brandon sat at the other end of the table, directly across from Dad, like he was co-chairing this meeting. There was one empty chair, clearly meant for me, positioned between Mom and Jennifer. I didn't sit in it. Instead, I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "So what's this final decision you're making?" Mom's smile was tight. "Kyle, please sit down. We need to discuss this properly." "I'm fine, standing." Dad's jaw clenched. "Kyle, sit down." The command in his voice, the expectation that I would obey, made something hot flare in my chest. I was 28 years old. I had my own apartment, my own job, my own life, and he was talking to me like I was a child who'd forgotten to do his chores. I sat down, not because he told me to, but because I wanted to hear what came next. "Thank you," Mom said, like my sitting was a concession. "Now, as we discussed last week, Brandon and Jennifer need housing. Your apartment is the logical solution." "We've been through this. My answer is no." "We understand that you're attached to your independence," Dad said, "but we've given this a lot of thought, and we've come to a decision." "A decision?" I repeated. "Yes." He looked around the table. "We're going to vote." The words hung in the air for a moment while I processed them. "Vote," I said slowly. "On what, exactly?" "On whether your lease should be transferred to Brandon," Mom said brightly, like this was a perfectly reasonable thing to vote on. "You can't vote on my lease. It's my lease." "But it's a family asset," Jennifer interjected. "Grandma was the guarantor, which makes it family property." "That's not how anything works." "We're not arguing about this," Dad cut me off. "We're voting. Everyone in this family gets one vote. Majority wins." I looked around the table. 5 people. Me, Mom, Dad, Jennifer, and... "Brandon doesn't get a vote," I said. "He's not family." "He's about to be family," Jennifer said. "The wedding is in 6 months. He's basically already my husband." "Basically doesn't count." "Kyle," Mom said, her voice sharpening. "Stop being difficult. We're doing this." "Fine," I said. My heart was pounding. Let's vote. All in favor of me keeping my own apartment. You know, the one I pay for, the one that's legally mine. Raise your hand. I raised my hand. Nobody else moved. All in favor of giving my apartment to Brandon, I said, my voice flat. 4 hands went up. Mom, Dad, Jennifer, and Brandon. They'd voted me out of my own home. Majority wins, Dad said, and there was satisfaction in his voice, like he'd solved a difficult problem. You have until the end of the month to vacate. To vacate, I repeated. Yes, that gives you 3 weeks. Plenty of time to find somewhere else. Brandon reached under the table and pulled out a cardboard box. He slid it across the table to me. To help you pack, he said with a smirk. I looked at the box, at Brandon's smirking face, at my sister, who was smiling like she'd won something, at my parents, who looked relieved that this unpleasant business was finally settled. Are you serious right now? I asked. Kyle, we've made our decision, Mom said. Please respect it. You voted on my apartment, my home, like it's community property. In a way it is, Dad said. Grandma left assets for the family. This apartment is one of them. Something clicked in my brain. Something important. Something they just said that was very, very wrong. Grandma left assets, I said slowly, for the family. Yes. Interesting. I stood up. I need to make a phone call. Kyle, we're not done. Mom started. Yeah, we are. I walked out. Behind me, I heard Jennifer say, God, he's so dramatic. I got in my car and just sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel. They'd voted me out of my own home. They'd actually done it. But as the shock began to fade, something else took its place. Something cold and clear. They'd made a mistake, a big one, because the apartment wasn't a family asset. It was mine. But more than that, Grandma's estate had been complicated. I remembered vaguely signing papers after she died. Papers about trusts and beneficiaries. Papers I'd barely paid attention to because I was grieving and overwhelmed. Papers that Dad had told me were just formalities, and that I should just sign where indicated. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who would know the truth. Foster Estate Law. This is Diane speaking. Hi, Diane. This is Kyle Foster. I'm calling about my grandmother's estate, Ruth Foster. I was wondering if I could schedule a consultation, urgently. Of course, Mr. Foster. Let me check. Would Monday morning at 9 a.m. work? Perfect. I hung up and sat there in my parents' driveway. If they wanted to play games with my housing, fine. But I was about to remind them that when you vote, you'd better be sure you have the legal right to do so, and I had a feeling they didn't. Monday morning, I sat in the offices of Foster Estate Law, the firm that had handled Grandma Ruth's estate, feeling like I was about to uncover something important. Dick, the attorney, Margaret Chen, was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd been Grandma's attorney for 20 years. Kyle, she said warmly, shaking my hand, I haven't seen you since the estate settlement 3 years ago. How can I help you? I have a question about the trust, the one that made me the beneficiary. Her eyebrows rose slightly. The Foster Family Trust? Yes. My family is claiming that my apartment, the one Grandma co-signed for, is a family asset because she was the guarantor. They're trying to make me give it up. Margaret's expression darkened. Give it up? To whom? My sister's fiancé. They had a vote. They literally voted me out of my own apartment. She was quiet for a moment, then she stood up and walked to a filing cabinet. She pulled out a thick folder labeled Foster, Ruth, Estate. Kyle, did you read the trust documents when you signed them? Not really, I admitted. I was kind of a mess after Grandma died. Dad said they were just formalities. Your father, Margaret said carefully, had his own reasons for wanting you to sign quickly without reading carefully. She opened the folder and pulled out a document. The Foster Family Trust was established by your grandmother in 2019, 2 years before she died. She set it up specifically to protect you. Protect me from what? From your family. She slid the document across the desk. Read Section 3, Subsection B. I read, the beneficiary of this trust, Kyle James Foster, is granted sole and irrevocable rights to any property, asset, or financial instrument guaranteed, co-signed, or otherwise supported by the grantor. These rights cannot be transferred, revoked, or otherwise diminished by any other party, including immediate family members. Any attempt by non-beneficiary family members to coerce, manipulate, or otherwise pressure the beneficiary into relinquishing these rights shall result in immediate forfeiture of all trust benefits to the offending parties. I read it again. What does this mean? I asked, though I was starting to understand. It means, Margaret said, That your apartment is legally and irrevocably yours. Your grandmother made sure of that. But more than that, it means that by attempting to force you out of it, your family has triggered the forfeiture clause. The forfeiture clause. Yes, your grandmother was very specific about this. She saw how your family treated you. She mentioned it to me several times. She wanted to make sure that if they tried to take advantage of you after her death, there would be consequences. My heart was pounding. What consequences? Margaret flipped to another page. The trust currently provides quarterly distributions to your parents, $5,000 each per quarter. Your sister receives $2,000 per quarter. These distributions were meant to supplement retirement and provide financial stability. I didn't know they were getting money. Your grandmother specifically requested that you not be told. She didn't want them to resent you for being the primary beneficiary. But she also included this clause. If any of them attempted to take your assets, their distributions would be suspended immediately and permanently. I sat back in my chair. So by voting to take my apartment, they've forfeited their access to the trust funds, all of them. How much are we talking about? Over the remaining duration of the trust, which has about 15 years left, your parents would have received approximately $150,000 each. Your sister would have received $120,000. Jesus Christ. I stopped. Can we enforce this? Not only can we, we're required to. I'm the executor of the trust. Your grandmother's wishes are legally binding. The moment they held that vote, they triggered the forfeiture. What do I need to do? Nothing. I'll draft a formal notice and send it to all affected parties. But Kyle, I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Once this notice goes out, there's no taking it back. Your relationship with your family will be permanently altered. I thought about the vote, about Brandon sliding that cardboard box across the table, about my parents voting to make me homeless, about Jennifer calling me selfish for wanting to keep my own home. Send it, I said. Margaret nodded. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. That evening, I sat in my apartment. My apartment, the one that was legally and irrevocably mine, and waited. The notification would go out at 5 p.m. Margaret had copied me on it. At 5:03 p.m., my phone started ringing. Mom, I didn't answer. Dad, I didn't answer. Jennifer, I didn't answer. Then the text started coming in. Mom, call me now. Dad, we need to talk immediately, Jennifer. What did you do? Mom, how could you do this to your family? Dad, this is blackmail. Jennifer, you're a fucking psychopath. I turned on my TV and pulled up a movie. Let them stew. At 7 p.m., my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Brandon. He was banging on the door now. Open up, Kyle. We need to talk. I called the front desk. Hi, this is Kyle Foster in 4B. There's someone harassing me at my door. Can you send security? Right away, Mr. Foster. 2 minutes later, I heard security's voice. Sir, you need to leave the building. I just need to talk to him. You need to leave now, or I'm calling the police. I heard footsteps retreating. Then my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Kyle Foster? A woman's voice. Yes? This is attorney Margaret Chen. I wanted to let you know that Brandon Morrison, your sister's fiancé, just called my office making threats. I've documented everything and advised him that any further contact would be considered harassment. Thank you. Also, your father called. He wants to negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. That's what I told him. But he's insisting that the vote was symbolic and that they never actually intended to force you out. I laughed. It came out bitter. They voted me out and gave me a box to pack with. I'm aware. I've documented all of that in the official complaint. Kyle, I need to inform you of something else. Based on the threats from Mr. Morrison, I've advised your building management to add him to the banned list. He's no longer permitted on the property. You can do that? As executor of the trust and your legal representative in this matter, yes. I've also sent cease and desist letters to all involved parties. They're prohibited from contacting you directly about this matter. All communication must go through me. What about regular family stuff? They can contact you for non-trust-related matters, but any mention of the apartment, the vote, or the trust will be considered a violation. After I hung up, I sat on my couch feeling something I hadn't felt in days, safe. They couldn't take my home, they couldn't harass me, and they'd just lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because they'd tried. My phone buzzed one more time. Rachel. OMG, what is happening? My mom just called freaking out. Something about a trust? Me? It's a long story. I'll explain later. But I'm okay. Rachel. Your parents are losing it. Jennifer apparently threw her phone at a wall. Me? Good. Rachel. Savage. I love it. I smiled and put down my phone. The vote had backfired. Hard. The next 2 weeks were chaos, but it was distant chaos, like watching a storm from inside a secure building. Margaret handled everything. Every angry call from my parents, every threatening text from Brandon — he'd sent several before the cease and desist took effect — every sobbing voicemail from Jennifer. But the real impact of the forfeiture clause didn't become clear until the following Monday when Rachel called me. "Kyle, are you sitting down?" "Should I be?" "Jennifer's wedding is imploding, like catastrophically imploding." I sat down on my couch. "Tell me everything." "Okay, so apparently, and I'm getting this from my mom, who got it from your mom, your parents were paying for about 60% of the wedding, the venue, the catering, the photographer, all the big expensive stuff." "Okay." "They were paying for it with the trust distributions. They'd been saving them up for the past 2 years, specifically for Jennifer's wedding." Oh no." "But now that the distributions are cut off," Rachel continued, "they don't have the money. They tried to take out a loan, but their credit isn't great. Your dad's been retired for 3 years, and your mom never worked. So they can't pay for the wedding." "They can't pay for the wedding. The venue called Jennifer yesterday saying the next payment was overdue. She had a meltdown, called the trust attorney, your grandma's attorney, and tried to argue that the forfeiture shouldn't apply to the wedding money because it was already allocated. The attorney basically told her that's not how forfeiture works." I felt something twist in my chest. Not quite guilt, but not quite satisfaction either. "What's Jennifer going to do?" "That's where it gets worse. She called Brandon's parents asking if they could help cover the costs." "And?" "And Brandon's parents asked why the sudden money problems. Jennifer tried to spin it as your parents having cash flow issues. But Brandon's mom is apparently really sharp. She pushed for details. Jennifer eventually broke down and told her everything. The gambling debt, losing the condo, the vote, the trust forfeiture." "How'd that go?" "Brandon's parents lost their minds. They didn't know about the gambling. They didn't know he'd lost his condo. They thought he was still living there. He'd been lying to them for months." "Jesus." "Brandon's dad apparently said, and this is a direct quote according to my mom, 'We are not funding a wedding for a man who gambles away his home and tries to steal someone else's.'" "They pulled out?" "They pulled out. They also demanded he go to therapy for gambling addiction or they'd cut him off completely. Brandon refused. His dad said, 'Fine, you're on your own.' His mom cried. It was a whole thing." I sat there processing this. "So the wedding?" "The wedding is canceled. Jennifer made the announcement this morning. She spun it as postponed, but everyone knows what that means. She's been posting vague Instagram stories about betrayal and how you find out who really loves you in hard times." "Is she blaming me?" "Oh, absolutely. You're the villain in her version of events. You're the one who chose money over family. Never mind that she literally voted to make you homeless." "How are Mom and Dad handling it?" "Not well. Your dad called my dad yesterday asking if he could borrow $20,000. My dad said no, he can't afford it, and also he thinks what they did to you is wrong. Your dad got really angry, said everyone's turning against them. Your mom's apparently not talking to anyone. She's embarrassed." "She should be." "The best part? Brandon's been calling Jennifer nonstop, begging her to fix this. He thinks if she apologizes to you and you forgive them, the trust money will come back." "That's not how it works." "I know that. You know that. Apparently Brandon doesn't know that. He showed up at your parents' house yesterday demanding they make Kyle undo this. Your dad told him to leave. They got into a screaming match in the driveway. The neighbors called the cops." "You're kidding." "I wish I was. It's the most entertainment our family's had in years, honestly. My mom is living for this drama." After we hung up, I sat there feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated. They tried to take my home, and now they were facing consequences. Real, tangible consequences. But another part of me felt sad. Not for them. They'd made their choices. But for what this said about my family. About the fact that they'd so easily voted to displace me. About the fact that even now, they were angry at me for defending myself rather than angry at themselves for trying to take advantage. My phone buzzed. "Unknown number. This is Brandon. I know you blocked me." "I'm texting from a friend's phone. We need to talk. I'll make this right. Just tell me what you want." I blocked the number. 2 days later, Margaret called. "Kyle, I wanted to give you an update. Your sister attempted to visit your apartment building today." "What? When?" "Around 2 p.m. She told the front desk she was your sister and needed to speak with you urgently. The desk called up to your unit, you weren't home, and then informed her that without your explicit permission, they couldn't let her up." "What did she do?" "She caused a scene. Started crying, said it was a family emergency. The desk held firm. She eventually left, but not before shouting in the lobby about how you'd destroyed her life. Great. I've sent an additional letter to your building management recommending they add your sister to the banned list as well. Given her behavior and the ongoing nature of this dispute, it's in everyone's best interest. Do whatever you think is best. There's one more thing. Your father sent me a formal letter requesting a meeting to discuss options. He claims he wasn't aware of the forfeiture clause and that he never would have suggested the vote if he'd known. Is that true? I have documentation proving that I personally explained the forfeiture clause to him when the trust was established 3 years ago. He signed a form acknowledging that he'd read and understood all terms, so no, it's not true. What do you want me to do? Nothing. I've already responded declining the meeting. There are no options to discuss. The forfeiture is permanent and non-negotiable per your grandmother's explicit wishes. Okay. Kyle, I know this is difficult, but your grandmother knew this might happen. She prepared for it. She wanted you protected, and now you are. After she hung up, I walked to my window and looked out at the Sound. The water was gray today, choppy with small whitecaps. A ferry was making its way across to Bainbridge Island. Grandma had known. She'd known they'd try something like this, and she'd protected me. I pulled out my phone and looked at an old photo of her, one from 2 years before she died, when we'd gone to lunch together, just the two of us. She was smiling, holding up a glass of wine. Thanks, Grandma, I said quietly. My phone buzzed. Jennifer, I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. My wedding, Mom and Dad's retirement, my relationship, all because you're too selfish to help family. I will never forgive you for this. I almost deleted it. Almost. But then I thought about the vote, about that cardboard box, about Brandon's smirk. I typed back, You voted me out of my home. I'm just respecting your vote. I hit send and blocked her number. They'd tried to evict me. Instead, they'd evicted themselves from Grandma's money, from my life, and from any moral high ground they thought they had. The vote had backfired harder than they could have ever imagined. 3 weeks after the fallout, I received an email from Margaret Chen. Subject, Additional Trust Documents. Immediate attention required. I opened it immediately. Kyle. While reviewing the complete trust file in light of recent events, I discovered a sealed envelope marked, To be opened only in the event of forfeiture. Per your grandmother's instructions, I am forwarding the contents to you now. The envelope contained a personal letter from Ruth to you, along with an amended deed to your apartment. Please review both as soon as possible. Best regards, Margaret Chen. Escalates attached were 2 PDFs. The first was labeled lettertokyle.pdf. I opened it and saw Grandma's handwriting, that distinctive cursive she'd used for everything, slightly shaky in her final years, but still elegant. My dearest Kyle, if you're reading this, then something I've long feared has come to pass. Your family, my son, his wife, your sister, has tried to take from you what is rightfully yours. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not. I've watched for years as they've treated you like an afterthought, a convenient resource, someone to be used when needed and ignored otherwise. Your sister has always been given what she wanted without having to work for it. Your parents enabled her because it was easier than holding her accountable. And you, dear, wonderful, responsible you, became the family workhorse, expected to give without complaint, expected to sacrifice without recognition. I saw it all. When you asked me to co-sign your apartment lease 3 years ago, you were so apologetic. I hate to ask, Grandma, you said. I know it's a big responsibility. But what you didn't realize is that I'd been waiting for that moment, a chance to give you something that was truly yours, something they couldn't take. I set up the trust with very specific terms. I knew that eventually, probably after I was gone, when I couldn't intervene directly, they would try something. They would ask you to give up the apartment for Jennifer, or for some family emergency that wasn't really an emergency. And they would frame it as your duty, your obligation, but you have no obligation to light yourself on fire to keep them warm. The forfeiture clause was my insurance policy. If they tried to take from you, they would lose everything. It's harsh. I know that. But I've learned in my 84 years that some people only understand consequences when those consequences hit their wallet. I don't know how this has played out. I don't know if you're hurting right now, feeling guilty, questioning whether you did the right thing. But please understand this. You did nothing wrong. Defending your boundaries is not selfish. Protecting your home is not cruel. Standing up for yourself is not betrayal. They betrayed you first. I love you, Kyle. I always have. You were the one who visited me every week in those final years. You were the one who asked about my day, who listened to my stories, who treated me like a person instead of just an old woman waiting to die. You were the one who cried at my funeral, really cried, not performative grief for the crowd. You deserved more from your family than what you got. I'm sorry I couldn't fix that while I was alive, but I can fix it now, in this small way. This home is yours. The apartment at 517 Pine Street, Unit 4B. Free and clear. I've had the deed transferred to your name, effective upon the triggering of the forfeiture clause. No more lease, no more landlord. It's yours, completely, permanently. Build your life there, Kyle. Fill it with people who value you. Create the family you deserved but never had. And if anyone ever tells you that you were wrong to protect what was yours, remember this. I gave it to you specifically because I knew you'd protect it, because I knew you had the spine that the rest of them lacked. I'm proud of you. All my love, Grandma Ruth. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. She'd known exactly what would happen, and she'd protected me. With shaking hands, I opened the second PDF, amendeddeed.pdf. It was a property deed. For 517 Pine Street, Unit 4B, Seattle, Washington. Owner, Kyle James Foster. Dated from 2 months before Grandma died, held in escrow by Margaret Chen, to be released upon triggering of the forfeiture clause. I didn't just have the lease anymore, I owned the apartment, free and clear, no mortgage, no landlord, no rent, mine. I sat there in my living room, in my apartment, in my home that nobody could ever take from me, and cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not sad tears, not exactly, something more complicated. Relief and grief and gratitude all mixed together. Grandma had given me more than an apartment. She'd given me proof that I mattered, that I was valued, that someone had seen how I'd been treated and had decided to do something about it. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Hey, are you okay? My mom said something about additional trust stuff coming out. Me. More than okay. I'll explain later. But Rachel, thank you for being on my side through this. Rachel. Always. That's what real family does. Real family. I looked around my apartment, at the art I'd hung on the walls, at the couch I'd picked out myself, at the window with its view of the sound, at the life I'd built here, piece by piece, without anyone's help except for one elderly woman who'd seen me struggling and had decided to throw me a lifeline. My doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole, tensing for a moment, worried it might be Brandon or Jennifer or my parents. It was a delivery person with a large package. I opened the door. Kyle Foster? That's me. Sign here, please. I signed and took the package. It was from Margaret Chen's office. Inside was a framed copy of Grandma's letter, professionally matted, along with a note from Margaret. Kyle, your grandmother requested that I have her letter framed and sent to you if the forfeiture clause was ever triggered. She wanted you to have a permanent reminder that you did the right thing. Also enclosed is the original deed to your apartment, along with all relevant paperwork. You own it outright. Estimated value, $450,000. Property taxes are paid through the end of this year via the trust. Congratulations on your home. Margaret. I hung the letter on the wall across from my couch, where I could see it every day. That evening, I posted something on social media for the first time in months. Not a long explanation. I didn't owe anyone that. Just a simple post. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. But a home built on your own terms is worth more than any family that treats you like you're disposable. Thank you to the one person who truly saw me. Rest in peace, Grandma. The responses came quickly. Friends I hadn't talked to in a while reaching out with support. Co-workers liking and commenting. Rachel commented, proud of you. And several mutual friends, people who knew my family, sent private messages. I always wondered about your family dynamic. Good for you. Your sister is posting some wild stuff. Ignore it. You did the right thing. Your grandma sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Kyle? A woman's voice, older, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Patricia Morrison, Brandon's mother. I almost hung up, but curiosity stopped me. Mrs. Morrison. I want to apologize for my son's behavior. I just learned, today, actually, the full extent of what he did. The vote, the harassment, the gambling debt he'd been hiding from everyone. I'm horrified. Okay. I also wanted you to know that I've told Jennifer she deserves better than this, Better than a man who'd ask his fiancé's family to displace her brother so he could have cheap rent. That's not the kind of man I raised him to be, but apparently it's who he's become. I appreciate you saying that. I also wanted you to know, and please don't share this with your family yet. Jennifer will tell them when she's ready. She broke up with Brandon yesterday, for good this time. Oh. She realized that a man who'd let things get this far, who'd encourage her family to turn on her brother, who'd see nothing wrong with that vote, that's not someone she wants to build a life with. She called off the engagement. How is she? Devastated, embarrassed, angry at herself for not seeing it sooner, but I think ultimately relieved. She's staying with us for a while, getting some space from your parents. That's probably good. Kyle, I don't know if this matters to you, but from everything Brandon accidentally revealed about you while trying to justify his actions, you sound like you have your life together. You sound responsible and independent, and I'm sorry that your family didn't see that, didn't value that. Thank you. After she hung up, I sat there processing. Jennifer had ended it. The wedding was truly canceled, not just postponed. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a vague sense that maybe, eventually, Jennifer would understand what had happened, maybe not. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. 2 days later, there was a knock on my apartment door. I checked the peephole, expecting another delivery. It was Jennifer. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen. I opened the door but kept the chain on. Jennifer. Kyle, can we talk? The lawyers said, I know what the lawyers said. I'm not here about the trust. I'm here as your sister, please. I considered it. Every instinct said to close the door, to protect myself, to maintain the boundary. But something in her face, the genuine devastation, the lack of her usual performance, made me hesitate. I closed the door, removed the chain, and opened it again. You have 10 minutes. She came in and stood awkwardly in my living room, looking around like she'd never seen it before. Your apartment is really nice. Thanks. Kyle, She stopped, started again. I fucked up. Really badly. Yeah. Brandon and I broke up. I'm sure you heard. His mom called me. She did? Jennifer looked surprised. What did she say? That you deserve better than him? That she was sorry for how he acted. Jennifer's face crumpled. I do deserve better. I deserved a fiancé who wouldn't ask me to betray my brother, and you deserved a sister who would tell him no. I didn't say anything. I don't... She wiped her eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I forgive myself. When I think about that vote, about handing you that box, about everything we said, Kyle, I don't recognize that person. I don't know when I became someone who could do that to you. You've always been that person, Jennifer. This wasn't new. It was just more obvious. She flinched. That's fair. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you've spent our entire lives getting exactly what you wanted while I got the leftovers. And the one time I refused to give you something, you tried to have me voted out of my own home. I know. Do you? Because it seems like you only care now because there were consequences. The trust money is gone, the wedding is canceled, Brandon left. If none of that had happened, would you be here? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Probably not. And that makes me a terrible person. It makes you honest, at least. Kyle, I can't undo what I did. I can't bring back the trust money or fix things with Mom and Dad, but I want you to know. I understand now. I understand why you said no, why you defended yourself. And I understand why Grandma put that clause in the trust. She knew you'd do this. She knew I was spoiled and selfish and that Mom and Dad enabled it. She tried to tell me once, actually, a few months before she died. She said I needed to appreciate what I had and stop always wanting more. I thought she was being dramatic. Jennifer laughed bitterly. Turns out she was just being accurate. What do you want, Jennifer? Why are you really here? I wanted to apologize, face to face. Not because I think it'll fix anything, but because you deserve to hear it. I'm sorry I voted to take your home. I'm sorry I called you selfish. I'm sorry I spent our whole lives treating you like you existed to make my life easier. You deserved a better sister. I looked at her standing in my living room, this person who'd tormented me for 28 years, who'd just lost everything because she'd finally pushed too far. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully, but I don't know if we can have a relationship after this. I understand. Maybe someday, if you actually change, if you actually become someone who values people for more than what they can do for you. But right now, I need space. That's fair. She looked around one more time. For what it's worth, I'm glad Grandma did what she did. I'm glad you got the apartment. You earned it, and you were right to protect it. She walked to the door, then paused. Kyle, can I ask you something? What? Do you think Mom and Dad will ever understand what they did wrong? I thought about it. No, I don't think they're capable of that kind of self-reflection. She nodded slowly. Yeah, that's what I thought too. After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time, processing. Maybe Jennifer would change. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my job to fix her. My job was to live my life, in my apartment, in my home, the home that nobody could take from me.